So I'm 10 years old, and I am probably, 4 foot -5, and I'm like 50 pounds, and I'm playing for my select soccer team, the U11 soccer team, the Strikers. And like in my head, it's like it is the biggest, most epic deal. We're playing in a huge game against the Lasers, and every year it's always either the Lasers or the Strikers that win. And like I mean, looking back, I don't know why we're both black and yellow, but we always had to like wear mostly black or mostly yellow when we played. But anyways, we're in this big game. It's like right at the end. I'm like left defense, and last second breakaway, they get it, right? They get this last second breakaway. They got their super speedy, like Ronaldo-esque guy just burning down the field, gets past our last defender, and burning towards the goal. He takes a shot. The goalie blocks it, but the ball is not, it's not caught. It's like trickling in front of the goal, and this trailing offender on the Lasers kept up with the play and taps it in. We lose. Like the ref blows the whistle moments later. I was just heartbroken. Now, the reason is because as left defense, in my little, tiny brain, I'm like, man, I could have done something. In my head, I'm like this massive athlete at the time. Like, I could have sped down there and like done this sweet whatever. So, the thing is, I felt terrible, and it at the time it was as big as any moment in sports I had had up to that point. And, feelings-wise, that mimicked the loss at the end of your club season or college season or something. So I was just heartbroken, and I felt bad. I felt guilty that I didn't go and do the thing I maybe could have done. And I felt shame, and I felt just all these things. I was just overwhelmed. And so on the ride home, my dad is just chatting me up, and, like, he was there as a dad, right? And he's watching me scoot around and the kids play, and so he's like chatting me up in the car, and I'm in this abject to sadness, and he's just chatting me up, and finally I'm like, Dad, I don't want to talk. And he's like, Tyler, and he gets a tone. I mean, he was he wasn't strict, but like when he said something, you get that tone. He's like, Tyler, this isn't a taxi ride. You have to talk. And it's funny, but here's the thing. Again, in that same little tiny Tyler 4-foot negative brain, I took it in this really weird way, and like the way kids sort of misunderstand things. And I'm sure he meant it like, talk about what you're feeling and not saying and all this stuff. Like, get it out. It'll make you feel better. But in my head, I took it in this really weird way that was like, Tyler, I'm doing you a favor. Like, I'm giving you a ride. You can't just be extremely negative with me. Like, that's not like a friendly thing back. Like, there's a give and take. You have to be friendly. So it was this really weird moment where I only really realized this in retrospect, but I took all of that sadness, emotion, shame, guilt, all that stuff, and just sort of put it in this part over here, and was like, jovial or talkative or not grumpy for the car ride home. But I sort of stuck that away as a lesson. Again, I don't really realize that until later, but it stuck with me. And it was just like this seedling, like inception, when you just sort of plant something, and then like it's not, you don't know it's there, and then it sort of grows, but like it grew. And I realized like it had been nurtured by a whole bunch of stuff outside of that, like the notion of like in sports, boys don't cry, like you don't show emotion, and real men don't, you're tough and all this stuff. and outside of that, it also like it grew because it was a strength. If I could not be affected by stuff emotionally and take it and channel it and put it away and not just basically get it out of there and react the way I wanted to react, or react the way that it would serve me or help the people around me or something, I could make situations better by being able to control it, by being able to take all those feelings and put them in this place in me that I could deal with on my own. Because that was what I had learned was nice. It was kind. That was like what you owed people. You didn't want to just hang out with someone and be like, this sucks. I'm sad. And they're like, well, let's hang out. You're like, yeah, I'm sad. Like, that to me was what it was. So I had learned over time that this worked out great. I mean, it helped me in jobs, it helped me in sports, it helped me, compete on the soccer and later in the ultimate field. Like, I could project the person that I wanted to be without being constrained by these emotions that were negative and just hindered me. So all was well and good. You can see where this is going. It was a Tuesday. I know that because it was a track day. Every Tuesday, this was in 2009, I had just made sockeye. I was a rookie. I was incredibly nervous all the time, but also really excited, so I did everything. And track days were always just the most grueling days because A, the workouts were just brutal. B, I didn't want to be the slow guy. C, I'm tiny, so I didn't want to be pathetic, and I wanted people to think I made the team because I should have made it. And C, you know the workout beforehand, so all day you get to think about it. So I had this massive track anxiety, and I remember it very distinctly. It was August 25th in 2009. But I'm driving to track, and I'm playing my pump-up music, so I get in the right zone so I can compete, and I can do all the stuff, and I'm excited. And I pull into the parking lot of Roosevelt High School, and my mom calls. And my mom, she calls sometimes at random times, intervals, and she'll say hey, did you get the taco I sent you? Or, did you get the? She'll say, did you get the email? I'm like, you sent the? Yes, I got the email. And she's like, well, you don't always check it. I'm like, well, you and Dad both have the same account on AOL, and why do you even have AOL anymore? It's 2009. I didn't even know people had that, or Prodigy or something, but. So my mom calls, and I pull in. I'm like, oh, well, and I always answer. So I answered, and about a minute and a half later, I knew my mom had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and I didn't know what to do with it. It was like this wave of heaping emotion. It was like dropping a boulder in a still pond and having it go in, and there was no splash. It was just nothing. Because I had taken all of that stuff and just put it, it was like I got the emotions, but I never dealt with them. So I had no structure within which to take this overwhelming thing that had just changed my entire world. And so I remember sitting in my car for an extra minute, 2 minutes, eternity, and just sitting and not knowing what to do at all. So I just did what I would otherwise do. There was no change. I didn't have a thing to do. I had no structure, so I just did what I normally did. And put it over here, and so I got out of the car, and instantly I'm leaving that cocoon, car, shelter, my own space. I'm immediately leaving that and entering this, sockeye world that's just like a frat party that's immediately people are yelling at me inside jokes about my butt and how I'm not, whatever. So the problem is I couldn't keep it there. And I remember I put my stuff down, we do, and I made it 2 laps of the 4 warm-up, 1.5 laps of the 4 warm-up laps. And as we're rounding the second lap, I sort of lagged behind and did the thing where you yeah, I'm gonna go stretch or do a thing. And we have a lot of players that do that because they don't like warming up. So I did that, and that was oh, whatever. But I remember at that point, it had already been a thing. People had been joking around with me, and I just couldn't really joke. And they'd sort of been what's the deal? I'm nah, I'm not talking about that. But I couldn't take it. It was clear that separation, that wall, that dam it was just cracks were forming everywhere. So what I did was I waited till they were sort of away and not looking at me, and I just sort of peeled off and went behind Roosevelt High School. And I remember distinctly just just breaking down, and I like just cried, and I just cried. Looking back, without like the sad aspect of it, it was kind of hilarious because I did the thing where you lean your back against a wall and put your head in your hands, and you slide down it like the Breakfast Club style, oh. But in the moment, like my world, like the world that I knew, similar to like the world that I had when I was a youth soccer player, that's what I was in. Like it was like inescapable emotion. And I like couldn't go back. So I just circled around the block, went to my car, and went home. I knew I had to say something. I knew this was not a thing that it changed. It changed how I could bottle that up or not. So I sent an email, and in the email, it was super simple. It was, I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to make in the future because I don't know what's going on because my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer. It is a big deal. It sucks, and I'm dealing with it, but you don't have to tiptoe around it. We can talk about it. It's not something that you have to be on eggshells. That's all, thanks. And I just had to like say something, but it was challenging, to say the very least, because as soon as I sent it, I just felt naked. It was like all of a sudden this thing that I had a structure for was just gone, and I had like exposed this thing, and I didn't know what to do, and I was all jittery. And then I got a reply. I remember the first reply I got was like, hey, buddy, my mom just went through this. She did chemo. It was very difficult for her, and I'm there for whatever if you need. Like if you want to like talk about it, if you don't want to talk about it, if you just want to get a beer and think about everything else, I'm there for you. I was like, man, it was like a small thing, but it made me feel a lot better. And then I got another email, 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 and I got like 12 or 13, and each one felt like successively more vulnerable from teammates, and they were like opening up and like saying things, like saying like they loved me, and like this is something that I had very consciously like separated from my own self. And so to have this be the experience I was having was like kind of mind-blowing. And it continued to be because that year I had developed, like from that set the stage for me being able to express stuff to them that I had never done before, and being able to like have that be a thing that I talked about. So like that separation for me was gone, and it like created these bonds that I had never really experienced before. And so if this were like a Disney movie, it'd be like, yes, and like I've changed, and I like now I was expressing. But the funny thing was, like, it didn't happen like that. I felt that, but at the time I was still within that bubble. I was like I couldn't see the forest for the trees, and similar to not being able to really get what was going on the soccer field, not really being able to get what was going on in the middle, not really being able to get what was going on during the time, like you only get those lessons from retrospect. And it took me a long period of time to even see this whole little pattern, and sort of start to glean anything from it. And what I'm gleaning is that there is benefits to exposing those parts, like to having those things. It makes your life better. And like it gave me this reflection time to see that during that period where I was experiencing all these pros about being able to control and separate the emotions, the cons that I couldn't even see at the time were when I didn't have or experience in just numbed sadness or jealousy or loss or all that stuff. I also lost the empathy for those kind of things. Because I didn't have them, I can't really empathize for people with them. That's not a thing. And I couldn't really experience the highs that come from having the low. It was just sort of, I was in this middle ground. And only in retrospect did I learn that stuff. But the big thing that came from it is that you're in these bubbles at any time, and you can't know exactly how to behave in them. You can only choose the best thing that you know at the time. And in retrospect, I may look back at the speech and be like, what was I thinking? But that's the challenge, right? And so for me, the thing that I take away is that now I have that choice where if I have something occur, I can either take it and put the emotion in that box, make it numb, make it not a thing, and control it. And that's safe. That's like easy. Or I can try to deal with it and go through that challenge of not only having it be tough for me, but having my control be challenged and maybe not as good. I can say that it's a choice, and it's always going to be a choice, and it's always going to be a challenge. But that's part of the reason I told this story, is that's why I chose this story. Thanks.